Welcome to another edition of Eddie G's Music World. This is the April 17th, 2018 version, and it's my third broadcast as well. We are continuing in our series of rock concert reviews, shows that I've been to in the past. We've gone through quite a bit, and there's still a decent amount more. My show is basically a way for me to have an outlet to discuss music in all its forms, either old concerts. At some point, we will get into upcoming events, maybe one day have guests, callers, who knows. But for now, it's me talking, and some of you will be listening. So next is the concert on my list is the Lynyrd Skynyrd concert. This was Friday, July 6th in 2012. It was a very hot summer night, an outdoor show, and it was there was one original member. I think it was Gary Rossington, the rhythm guitarist for Lynyrd Skynyrd back in the day, that survived the plane crash. He was the only one there from the old days. There was also the lead singer's younger brother, who sounded reasonably good, pretty much like his brother. I guess you can't bring the deceased brother back. You take what you can get. And I think also there was a member of the Black Crowes in that band too, if I remember. I think it was Johnny Colt. I like the show. I mean, it's like anything else. When you don't get the full band that you hear on the radio, you take the pieces that are remaining from the band, and I guess I understand why they would go on tour. Why not? You're not going to make money making new records called Lynyrd Skynyrd, for sure. So I remember enjoying the show. There was the Freebird, of course, towards the end, or that was the encore. I'm not really sure. And it was an admirable job. The lead guitarist, I don't know his name, he did a very good rendition of the guitar work from Freebird. And the soloing and everything, as good as you can expect when you're not Lynyrd Skynyrd guitarist from the old original band, at least. And that was in Ganawaki, which is an Indian reservation, and it was a lot of people there getting as much as they could from their old favorite songs by Lynyrd Skynyrd. Next on my list was a guy that he's a massive star. He's written hits for other people. He has a great voice, kind of a schmaltzy old style act, but I knew he wouldn't be touring for much longer. So in June 2012, I saw Neil Diamond at the Bell Center in Montreal. He was impressive. His voice was still good. He was getting a bit old, probably at that time close to 66, 67. So he played all the songs that he's well known for, just about every one. He had a lot of good stories about how he wasn't too thrilled to give I'm a Believer to the Monkees because they sped up the version that he liked. He liked the slow version of I'm a Believer, and they sped it up. He wasn't thrilled with it, but then when it went to #1, and I guess he made a lot of money, he was happy to be a part of that transition to the Monkees version. I would say that I'm glad I saw him for another reason. He announced a few months ago that he's no longer touring. So if I didn't see him in 2012, I think that would have been my last chance. I don't think he came back to Montreal after that. Next is Heart, 2014, also at the Bell Center. I'm also lucky I saw this show because the Wilson sisters have been feuding lately. I heard a story. I believe Anne's husband manhandled Nancy's kids, or one kid, and they had a bit of an argument, the two sisters, and that led to the breakup of the band at this point. So I think Nancy has done some opening gigs for Bob Seger, who I almost saw but didn't go to see. And at the show, I remember there was some drumming by Jason Bonham, John Bonham's son from Led Zeppelin, of course. And that was well done. He did a lot of Zeppelin songs, not a lot, about 4, 5, 6 or whatever. And Anne, with her powerful voice, did the vocal work of Robert Plant on those songs. I really enjoyed that. And all of the other Heart hit songs that they're well known for. As you know, Heart has had maybe 15 hits if you count the FM songs, in addition to their AM hits over the many years they were together. And interesting enough, I have a bit of a tidbit. I once wrote a letter to Billboard magazine about Heart, saying that they were kind of Canadian, or because they lived in Canada for a while, but whatever the reason was, they didn't print that one. But the second one, it was about Celine Dion, having had a massive, had her first hit in US in 1990. They printed that letter in the Billboard magazine. I was pretty excited to see that. So those were my 2 letters to Billboard. One got printed, one didn't. But Heart was great. Ann Wilson's voice is above all, in my opinion. She can belt it out. And if there was a Led Zeppelin reunion and Plant didn't want to join, I have a feeling Ann Wilson would be a great choice to fill in for him. Okay, I've got a couple of memories here from the Beach Boys. I have seen them 3 times. The last time was the 50th anniversary tour. Oh, no, that was actually the second to last. The last time was the one at the Bell Center with Brian Wilson, Mike Love, Al Jardine, and Bruce Johnston. So it was as close as you can get to the original band. Of course, you can't have the 2 Wilson brothers that passed away. And so you make do with most of the members. Brian Wilson looked a little bit detached from the show, but he could still sing, and he was playing some piano. And I liked hearing the old songs, and having Jardine there made it a little special because he sang on a few hits like Help Me Rhonda and other ones, and he was a big part of the band. That was at the Bell Center. The show before that was the one that kind of actually the show with the non-original members was mostly the Mike Love, Bruce Johnston version. That was another show I saw with the Beach Boys. That was also at the same venue as the Lynyrd Skynyrd concert in Ganawaki. And it was lackluster a bit. I mean, Mike Love was great in his vocals, but outdoor show, you didn't have Brian Wilson there, you didn't have Al Jardine there, so it was not a bad show, but nothing to get excited about. But it was a free show for me. I had won the tickets and went for free, so that was a good show in the sense I didn't have to pay for it, at least. The show after that, we're going back to September of 2005 at the Bell Center. Avril Lavigne was the show. She was just coming off of her peak albums of sales of many millions of copies, so she was still very, very popular. And she, I believe, played piano. I know she played some drums, and she sang very well. It was fun to see a young person be able to pull off a big concert like that. She was a great professional. Down the road, you know, her popularity waned by I would say by 2010 or 11. The hits were all behind her, and she got Lyme disease. She got divorced from the Derek Wilby from Sum 41. Then she got married to Chad Kroeger from Nickelback. And so and I think they broke up. But at that night, it was a well-done show. And like I say, I don't think Avril Lavigne's Bell Center shows are coming back. I'm sure she was going to run low on money at some point and go out on tour again. She's not that old. Lisa Germano was another show. Very, very, very forgettable show. I got told by a friend that he really wanted to go to the show, so he convinced me to go. I think she was the saxophone player or trumpet player for John Mellencamp, which is not exactly a position that gets you a lot of notoriety. But it was a small venue in the Cabaret at the time on St. Lawrence Street. Pretty forgettable show. I mean, if you played with John Mellencamp, it doesn't mean you're going to be an exciting person to watch live, or you're going to have any songs that anybody knew. So she did her show, but it was something that disappeared from my memory banks pretty much the next day or the same night. Kim Mitchell is the next artist on my list. He was at Théâtre Saint-Denis. I remember seeing him. I think the opening band was Helix, like a metal band in Canada. They had a bit of a following. They had a song called Rock You. It was interesting because the singer from Helix, he sat down in the seats to watch Kim Mitchell when Kim Mitchell was on after him, which you rarely see. You don't see opening acts lounge around with the public usually to watch the headliner, but that's what he did. I liked one part of the show a lot because when he sang his popular song All We Are, I found out at that second that they did the concert that he was not the lead singer on that song. Kim Mitchell, who sang on all his songs, didn't sing that song All We Are. It was a guitarist or bass player that picked up the microphone and started to sing. So there was no internet back in 1986, so you couldn't look stuff up. Maybe I could have checked the album to learn that there was the guitarist that did the singing on that song, but I didn't know, and it was a surprise to me that this guy did it, and he sang beautifully, and I've always liked that song. And of course, Kim Mitchell did all his other songs like "Go for Soda" and "Patio Lanterns." So it was a show worth remembering, and hard to believe that's 32 years ago. On the list is one of the two times I saw the Rolling Stones live. 1988 89 at the Olympic Stadium. Here I see the ticket price on that concert was $32.50, which maybe in 1989 was a lot of money. I say that because it was a fake ticket. I didn't actually pay for the ticket. It was a friend of mine that somehow got his hands on some bogus seats, and we flashed them through. I guess back then they didn't detect that it was a fake seat, and we got in, and there was no actual seat for us because it was not reserved seating. We just kind of wandered around. Like the seat that they gave us was like a duplicate, and someone else was already in the seat. So there's no point in going there and fighting with people when we were the ones scamming the system. So we walked around, and we didn't have actually anywhere to sit. We just kept being like nomads and walking around the Olympic Stadium. I loved it. It was a well-done show. I mean, of course, they're showmen. I mean, I read Keith Richards' book. I mean, they were doing concerts on tiny stages, and Mick was, learning his moves back in the early 60s when they started out. So these are consummate professionals and great musicians. And I remember that In Living Color opened up for them. They didn't have that many hit songs, but at the time they had Glamour Boy and one other cult of personality. I saw them the second time at the Bell Center. This one I did pay for, January 10th, 2006. Better show because it was a bit of a more smaller venue. It was the Bell Center as opposed to the stadium, which is not a great place to see concerts. And I was impressed by their moves, especially how they, Keith Richards and Ron Wood, they perfected this weaving technique to live guitar playing, which Keith actually mentions in his book, but I had noticed it and called it weaving before I even read about it, where you can't really tell who's doing what guitar part because they work so well together that you're looking and you can't tell who's playing exactly what. And Mick was great roaming around and had his way with the audience as usual, since he's very good at live performances, as are the whole band. Charlie Watts came out in this small little drum kit when he first came out. I said, how is he going to drum that well when he only has like 4 pieces or 6 pieces to his drum set? And he impressed me, and he showed me that he doesn't need as many drums as Phil Collins in order to make a great drumming performance. Turning the page to an act that I've seen twice. The first time I saw, I'll start with that one, was in the 1988 Alice Cooper. So he had his gimmicks, as he's known for, with all his props, and I it wasn't a very memorable show, but I remember liking it, so I guess that was enough of an impression. The opening act was Motorhead. That was the first time I'd seen Motorhead with Lemmy, and I was blown away by his ability to sing with his neck kind of upwardly. He had a bizarre stage presence, Lemmy, but and I didn't really know that many songs. I knew one or two, but I liked both the opening act of Motorhead and the headliner of Alice Cooper way back in those days. Then a few years later, quite a few, in about 2006, July 2006, I saw Alice Cooper again at the Théâtre Saint-Denis. Smaller venue, maybe over time he's lost some of his popularity since he, if you're not playing the Bell Center, you're going down to Théâtre Saint-Denis, it's a major drop in attendance since there's not as much room. And he did the same kind of thing. He had his daughter on stage, props as usual. I guess if a gimmick works that well, you might as well stick with it. But I think his music stands up pretty well. So, I mean, if he didn't have the gimmicks, he still has some great songs. So the show would have been okay anyway. But the fact is that's what he's doing. And I guess if he's going to keep doing it, he's still touring in 2018. Goes on the radio, has been interviewed, and doesn't want to quit. I guess he's got no reason to stop. Why not? On the next two ticket stubs, I see Elton John. Now, I saw him a long time ago the first time, and a little later on the second time. 1982. Wow, that goes way back. That was the first time I saw Elton John. And it's so long ago, I don't have any major recollections of details about the show, except the fact that I liked the quality. I liked he had most of his original band members. Dave Johnson was a great guitarist. The drummer, I don't remember his name, might have been Nigel Olsson was in the band. There was a guy named Pope, maybe. It's kind of sketchy to remember all the band members back then, but he reproduced the sound of his records with great precision. And now it looks like he's doing a 3-year retirement tour, which Rod Stewart made fun of, saying, listen, if you're going to stop performing, just finish your tour and just hang up your microphone and piano and, you know, don't tour, but you shouldn't make a 3-year goodbye tour, which is what Elton John's doing. I saw Elton John a little later on in 1993 as well, also at the Forum. I think this was the old Forum just before they switched to the new one, which the more modern one called the Bell Center. One memory stands out about the Elton John concert, the second one, is that there was some issue technically with his piano, and he had some tech guy adjusting stuff while he was playing it, and he was cursing out the techie who was trying to adjust something, and it was like you could see in Elton John's what he's known for is having a hothead, you know, a little bit of a short fuse, and you could see it on display that night in front of all the crowd. Next down the list, Lisa Loeb. She was a kind of 2 or 3 hit wonder, let's say. Mellow kind of guitarist or pianist. I think maybe one or both of those instruments. And she didn't have a massive career. She didn't last many years down the road. But still, I mean, she was a good singer, and she lasted as long as maybe 3-4 years before kind of being a bit of an act that didn't really... I mean, to this day, she still probably does shows, but she's no longer in the spotlight as far as hit records go. But nobody from those days pretty much is having hit records now. It's mostly rap and hip-hop and some country. Here's a band that I've seen them, I think, 3 times, but I only have 1 ticket stub here. But I'll try to just go over my Loverboy experiences in one discussion. First time I saw them, oh, I know why, because the first time I saw them, they were opening up for April Wine, so there's no ticket stub for them for that, since they were not the headliners. Then I saw them later on. So when they opened up for April Wine, 1980, they were at their peak, meaning they were having massive hits. They were competing with, they were more popular than April Wine in the US overall, if you take them at their whole. So at the time, they were they were probably a little bit more popular than April Wine, but later on, April Wine's hits in the US started to drift away. But Loverboy cracked out a good 8 or 9 hit songs. But they were amazing. Their energy was great. Mike Reno was young at the time, and he had the great voice. And it was the Forum opening for April Wine, and I liked it. I was very young, and it was fun music to hear. I saw them the second time at a small club on the West Island, which is no longer around. I think it was Sources West, Bourbon Street West. I like a small venue. It makes for a better show because you're very close to the act, and you can hear better and see better, and you actually have a shot at meeting some members because it's not a big club. And it was interesting because the drummer of April Wine, he was actually at the show as a spectator. It was his name escapes me. I'm sure I know the name, but for this second I don't have notes to keep me rolling with names. But he was the bald-headed drummer from April Wine for many years, who's since retired. But he was there, and nobody really bugged him. I mean, the guy was a massively huge guy. He looks like a weightlifter, so I guess people didn't want to get in his way. But I remember one thing I didn't like about that concert. It was kind of like my cult experience, wherein the act makes you wait over an hour and 20 minutes for them to come. Like, we're an hour and 20 minutes late. And I don't think anybody likes to be in a hot, sweaty summer atmosphere. And it was June, I see, 16th of June. So when you have to sit there in a sweaty room, and it was packed because Loverboy is a pretty big band. So when they come back to Canada and they do a show in Montreal, they're going to sell out the club, that's for sure. But it was great. I mean, they've always been impressive live. And I did enjoy it, despite the fact that they didn't really they should have been on time. Let's put it that way. You're listening to Eddie G's Music World, where all things music will be discussed. And our focus on the third episode of our show, of my show, is still concert reviews of shows I've seen in the past. And I wanted to share them with people that might end up on my YouTube channel, which is Eddie G's Music World. Eddie, E-D-D-Y, G''S, Music World. Robert Plant, I did see him, and a lot of anticipation with Robert Plant. He is the man from Led Zeppelin, so everybody, it's a big deal to go see a guy in a band that sold probably 230 or 40 million records or whatever they sold. And his voice was as great as I'd heard and as I'd read in Led Zeppelin biographies, how he blows the roof off of buildings that he sings in. He changed some of the songs to be reggae style and calypso style, which, it's his show. I know that he can do whatever he wants. He's a massive star, and everybody is there to see the great Robert Plant, but I wish he wouldn't have done that. And the songs that the 2 or 3 Zeppelin songs or whatever there were, to add beats and make it sound way different than the record, I didn't appreciate it. But it goes with the flow. When you see a band or an act live, they're not going to follow a script that you have in your mind. They want to be artistically able to change things up, and they did just that. But it's okay. I got through the show. It was still a decent show because I still got to see him and heard a lot of his songs that he's known for. My first Heart concert I've been to, I might have discussed Heart in depth. I don't remember if I discussed the first one or not, but I might as well just say a bit about it. It was in the 80s. It was when they were just still popular. They had a few hits, Nowhere to Run To, and other songs. All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You. That was popular around that time. And again, I've seen them twice, and they both impressed me. Ann Wilson's voice, Nancy's sings too, but not as much. And so the first time was great, and just like the second time. And I don't know if I'll get to see them again, since they're not exactly getting along, the two sisters. And you pretty much have to have both. Although an Ann Wilson solo concert might not be too bad. Who knows? Here's a man that I have 3 ticket stubs from this guy. Plus, I saw him outdoors for free at the Jazz Festival. So I'll throw that in my description. Stevie Wonder. I remember liking him mostly in the earlier times that I'd seen him in the 80s. I think it was the early or the mid 80s. I saw him at the Forum. That was the best time I saw him. He played all his great songs and singing, piano. There's no negative comments about that time that I saw him. Early time. Then I saw him a little later on in the, I think it was early 2000s maybe. Also great. Still loved him live. I think I have reviewed in earlier broadcasts of my show that I didn't like the time that I saw him around 2015 or 14, because he was rambling on too much about his personal stories that were kind of dull, and trying to do sing-alongs with the audience, and they weren't that, it wasn't working out too well. But the other 3 times, plus the live, well, I saw him outside live at the Jazz Festival, but I didn't really see him because it was cramped and very, very, very crowded, and I ended up not wanting to be crushed into these tight spaces in order to be able to hear Stevie Wonder at the Jazz Fest. So I remember just giving up on the show halfway through and just walking around the street and listening to them, the sound echo across the buildings, and it was just a bad experience when you're dealing with rain and wind and outdoor concerts and being far. It's kind of like pretty much not seeing the show. But I would say 3 out of the 4 times I've seen Stevie Wonder, 2 out of 4 times, let's say. 2 out of 4 times I liked his concert, and 2 out of 4 times I didn't. And you just get through it. I mean, you love an act, you just try to get through his concert as best as you can and enjoy what you can. Here's an act that's coming to town in Montreal, but I don't think I'm going to go because I'm running out of friends that go to see concerts with me. One friend is going, but he's going with his wife, and he already bought the tickets. So I don't think I'm going to go see them again. Daryl Hall and John Oates, 1985, if I remember, early on in my concert-going days. And they were amazing. I loved them live. They had great reproduction of their studio work. A lot of keyboards, I remember. A lot of a great light show. And that was way back in the days that they had all those hits. Meaning back in those days, they were cracking out hits every month for a year. So now, of course, they're a glorified oldies act, which everybody in music, except for almost very few people from the 80s, can still have hits. Nobody does anymore. But the voices were great. Daryl Hall possesses an amazing voice. When you're dealing with John Oates, he's doing quite a bit of things, but of course he doesn't stand out as the focal point of Hall & Oates. You don't hear his voice as much, but to be fair, he's singing, so he's playing bass or guitar, so he is contributing to the live concert. A concert which was very long time ago, early 80s, at the old Forum, was Foreigner. There was never so much anticipation as to when I saw Foreigner live. I was so excited. My friend at the time, Mike, we stopped being friends maybe a year after this. We just kept talking about how thrilled we were because Foreigner 4 had just come out. Urgent was on there. All these hits were coming out. And we were disappointed because, I don't know, it's one of those things. The sound was miserable. It was washed out. The speakers weren't working properly or something. I mean, I'm not a technical person that can explain to you why the sound is terrible, but it just was. And didn't I couldn't get much out of that concert positive because of it. Years later, I had a conversation on Twitter with Lou Gramm, the lead singer of Foreigner. And Lou Gramm is one of the few rock stars that will actually talk to his fans. I'm not saying he did it a lot, but he did it with me. And I told him about the concert, and he said he has vivid memories of some shows working out and some shows not, that it happened here and there, that you end up with bad sound quality. And that was the fun of talking to Lou about it. I mean, it was a treat. And I guess nowadays, if I want to see Foreigner, I have to see it without Lou Gramm, except that he does pop in every once in a while. He just did a couple of shows or a show where he sang 2 or 3 songs with the current singer whose name, well, I don't remember the lead singer's name now. But Foreigner now will sing without even the Mick Jones, the guitarist. So now if I'm going to go see Foreigner, I'm probably going to see it with or without Mick Jones and no other original members. So they're still making money, but they're a shell of their former self. If you don't have Mick Jones and you don't have Lou Gramm, you're pretty much not getting too much of what Foreigner sound is actually getting. Almost a cover band. They're pretty much a cover band at this point, but still, they still do a decent job. I've seen what they sound, I've heard what they sound like on YouTube videos. So, a band that I come across now on my list is a band that, in their heyday, for whatever reason, I never did see them. I always either didn't go with friends that wanted to go, or a friend didn't want to go. I don't know. There's always some reason. I was pretty young, and then maybe I didn't go out as much back then in the 70s. But Supertramp. So I did finally see them in 2002. This was when there was a break between Supertramp and Roger Hodgson. Hodgson had left the band. It's one of those things where they don't get along anymore. There's all kinds of explanations. And I was told, oh, you won't like Supertramp without Hodgson because he's the main singer in Supertramp, and it will be, a less exciting show or less impressive show. But I ended up really enjoying it because Rick Davies was the other singer of Supertramp, and he had a go. Crime of the Century was one of his songs, and Rudy and many others. So they only played songs that Rick Davies sang lead on, and maybe one song that Roger Hodgson sang lead on, Rick Davies covered or someone else in the band covered. So I still liked it, despite the fact that I was told I was getting like a watered-down version of Supertramp and it wouldn't be as good. But I was impressed. They're great musicians, and they put on a great show, and I'm very glad I did see them. Maybe one day there'll be a reunion, but I'm not too sure of that because they both seem pretty stubborn. These Hodgson and Supertramp don't seem like they want to get back together. Although I heard Hodgson made overtures to wanting to try out maybe a reunion, but it didn't turn out. So that leads me to a concert I saw Roger Hodgson probably about 3 weeks later in a smaller venue called the Spectrum, which doesn't exist anymore. And he did, of course, all the songs that he sang lead on. He probably wrote most, if not all of them. And he was a one-man show, which was quite amazing to see a guy with no other musicians on the stage with him. I was just blown away by that. He played keyboards, he played guitar, he sang. I mean, whatever it took, the song was pulled off without drums, without any other instruments, any other musicians. And I was blown away by how great it was, despite the fact that it was a one-man show. Actually, I'd seen Roger Hodgson a couple of years earlier in the Ringo Starr All-Star Band, where Ringo assembles a band of different people and they tour. Like Ian Hunter, Howard Jones was on that, and Sheila E. And all the instruments on the Ringo Starr All-Star Band took breaks during the concert, except for Roger Hodgson. He played guitar for everybody else's hits that were being sung. He was always playing the guitar. He never stopped. He just did everybody else's music as in addition to his own. And there was a third time I saw Roger Hodgson. I'll talk about it when it comes up on my list, which is probably somewhere deeper in my list of concerts, a little further down. Brings me to a band I've seen 2 times where they become probably 4 times more popular in their demise than they were when they were around, meaning the Ramones. I saw them in I believe it was 78. It's 1979 in a little club called Le Pretzel Enchaîné. So I was a big fan of theirs even back then, as a friend of mine was into punky type music, and he played the records for me a lot, and I got to know their music. And it was a small club, and they were amazing. I think I had just missed Tommy Ramone. He might have quit a few months earlier, because I looked it up, and Tommy Ramone, original drummer, I think he left early in 1979, and I saw the show summer of 1979. But it was great to see the Ramones live. They're true to form with their on-stage presence, and music was rapid fire songs being played in 2.5 minutes or less. And I'm glad I saw them back then. I didn't know if I'd ever see them again, but then I did see them again, 1992, also June, summer of. Another crowded place, Le Brick. And that show, there might not have been all the original guys. I know Joey Ramone and Johnny Ramone were there. The drummer was not Tommy anymore, of course, and the other player, DD, I don't know if it was the original bass player or not, but didn't make a big difference. They also had a great show, and it was a sold out show. Singing was as good as you could get, for sure. And probably within a few years, maybe 9 years later, the Ramones broke up and started to die, and there's no original members left of the band, which is incredible when you think about it. A band, they've been around over 40 years, so people do die. But all 4 members of the Ramones are no longer with us. Here's a singer. At the time, she had a bit of a following. So I was convinced by my friend Oren, who loved these kind of lesser-known acts more than me, and he convinced me to go. Heather Nova. I think I remember her doing a show without any other instruments as well. But the thing with her is she said that all the other people in her band were stopped at the Canadian border because they're from US, and they couldn't get in due to conflicts with the customs. Either they had criminal records or they didn't have all their paperwork in order. So it was just her. And I think she had 1 hit at the time. She never became a major act, but it was still a fun show. I mean, she signed papers for people. I think I have her autograph. And it was a fun show, even though it was just one singer in the band. I see next is Roxy Music, way back in the early 80s as well, at the Old Forum in Montreal. The date is cut off on my ticket stub, but I remember it being about 83 or so, 1983. There were 2 opening acts for Roxy Music. First one was Modern English, who had the hit I'm Out With You at the time. They didn't have much after that in North America. I think in England they may have had other hits, but in Canada, US, that was the only one that was played on the radio. I've actually heard commercials on TV where they play I'm Out With You, so whoever wrote that is getting residuals even to this day. So Men Without Hats, that was also another opening act for Roxy Music at that concert, and they've had 2 or 3 hits over the years, and he's a Montrealer originally. I think his name is Ivan Doroschuk, the main member. He had his brother in the band too. So he was the second opening act in Roxy Music. That back then, they were still coming out with popular records way before Brian Ferry's successful solo career. I knew their music because they had 2 or 3 songs played on the radio, Love is the Drug, and a couple more at the time. And I'm glad I went to see them because Roxy Music were probably not going to be around for a lot longer at that point. I don't remember when they broke up, but probably within a few years of that concert. So if I didn't see them then, I might not have had another chance to see them, and I'm glad I did. I see another show, a band from Montreal, I believe, Rational Youth. I don't remember much about it except they had one hit song on the radio in Montreal. I can't remember no more, no less. Yeah, that was their song. Never really made it outside of Canada, but they were like an alternative new wave type of band. And the one song I knew, they played it. So, I had a great experience to enjoy music that I had heard on the radio, to see it reproduced live, was worth the price of admission, which was $9.07. Try going to a concert for that price. You won't be able to. I go next to an act that I've seen 2 times, John Cougar Mellencamp. The first time was at the Forum, the old Forum, and 1987, and he did all his big songs. Like about half of his hits had already come out by then, Jack and Diane and I Need a Lover That Won't Drive Me Crazy, and kind of a show that not a lot of memories about it, except there was a full house at least for the show. So I mean, not every show has major memories for me. Sometimes I just went, I liked it, and I have a really great story to go with it. So I'll leave it at that. And I saw him again in 92, sorry, where he had this song like Cherry Bomb had just come out. So it was kind of it was a lot of rock songs that he was known for. And though that was a bit of a country flavored album, and it was not as good as the first time I'd seen him, because the country stuff was a little drab, but it was still a great show that I did see. So, I mean, chalk it up to history of concerts that I've seen over the years. Next one, Ian Gillan. He was, and still, I believe it. I don't know if Deep Purple exists anymore or not. They're kind of in flux. They've had a lot of changes over the years. A keyboardist just passed away, so I don't know if they exist or not, but it was a show similar to Ray Davies when I saw Ray Davies, where he did a lot of his solo stuff, which I have no clue about. And that was it was okay. I didn't know the music. But then maybe at the end he played one Deep Purple song, probably Smoke on the Water, or I don't even remember which one it was. It doesn't really matter. The funniest thing about the concert was he had some kind of notes or musical notes or something on the stage in front of him, and he had bare feet, and he would flip the pages of his notebook with his feet. I know, it's not that exciting to hear that story, but it's an anecdote about a singer, at least something that I remember. There's other stories connected to Ian Gillan, but that's in the Meeting Celebrity Rock Star show, which that will eventually be an episode. Since I've met quite a bit, I'll compile a list of all those rock stars I met and what I said to them and feedback from the show, from the rock stars themselves. We are almost at the end of the Eddie G Music World show, which we're reviewing old concerts I've seen. This is the April 17th, 2018 third edition of the show. So I will continue along. When I get to the hour mark I'm probably going to wrap it up, which means I have a few more concerts to discuss. Although I already did my Beach Boys reviews of the concerts of the Beach Boys, I didn't have my ticket stub from Brian Wilson's solo. So I will get to him right now. Brian Wilson, he did some solo tours lately in the last 2-3 years, and I know when I saw him, I'm gonna say the ticket stub's a little 2005. He was, you could see with him, due to all the medication or issues, health issues he's had, kind of, he's dropped a notch in his talent, in his voice. He's dropped 30% of his vocal range, and he looked a little bit kind of disassociated from the crowd. He had some kind of small organ he was playing on stage. He's still viable, still could play, still could sing, but you could sense there was something missing. And you just take what you can get from these older acts. I mean, I wouldn't go see him again. I've seen enough. I mean, I've seen the Beach Boys reunited with him, and then I've seen him on his own. And I go to a lot less concerts now than I used to. So don't expect to see Brian Wilson. And let's face it, the guy's in his mid-70s. How much more can he tour? I'm sure he's got enough money to stop touring. I just don't see him getting back on the road again more than once again for another tour. I saw the what I think was the second ever concert, major concert at the Olympic Stadium. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, a major event at the time. And August 1977, I see a ticket price of $10, yes, with charges, $10. I remember meeting this guy on his bicycle in near my house, and he was like some kind of a scalper, but not a big deal. And I think I had to give him $14. Oh my God. He added $4 to the ticket. So that was with a full orchestra. It got a little weird in there with the orchestra. I'm not a big fan of taking a hard rock band or progressive rock band and tossing in 30, 40 instruments on top of it. It gets muddled and messy, but I still liked the show. I was only 17 at the time. Hadn't seen many shows in my life. So it was quite impressive to see a full band. Just that I felt, I don't know. I did see them later on without the full band, and I liked that a little bit, maybe more. So that was way back then. I don't think there was an opening act, and it was too voluminous a place to see a concert. I don't like the Olympic Stadium. It's too vast. Sound is not great. I try not to go to shows there. I've missed a few over the years because I just don't like going to the Olympic Stadium. It's very, very, very far. So I go when I have to go. Here's the next time I saw Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I think it was the second and last time, 1998. A better show than the 1977 one. For the reason I just mentioned, it was when it was called Centre Molson, which later became the Bell Center. And the sound was much, much better. The instruments were easier to hear, the singing. And it's too bad, but since that time, Emerson, Lake and Palmer has lost Lake and Emerson. So that's a band that you can just say goodnight to. They'll never, they're only in the history books. Carl Palmer has come here on his own, but I've seen Carl Palmer in Asia. So I don't think I would go see Carl Palmer on his own, do a small show unless it was really convenient for me. Deep Purple, this was, actually with that concert, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I saw Deep Purple. Excuse me, which was the second time I'd seen Deep Purple. So there was a double bill. And Deep Purple, I don't remember who opened for who, but Deep Purple was without Ritchie Blackmore. So, it was still a great show. I don't think they lacked any amazing show just because Ritchie Blackmore wasn't there. And that brings me to the next show, which was Deep Purple with Ritchie Blackmore. Had to be 82 or 83. Sometimes these tickets, in the old days, they didn't scan tickets. They just tore them. So the guy who tore my ticket, he took the date off, except that it was 31st of March, but I can't see the year. I love that show because the guitars were great. We had great seats, my friend and I. and they played all their songs that they're well known for. And the more original a band is, the more I tend to like the band. I hate like when they keep changing up players, but since those days, there's been rumors that Richie Blackmore would like to get back with the remaining members of Deep Purple, which I think it would be fun to see. But they're not as crazy about him as he is of getting back with them. He says it's to dispel rumors that they hate him. That's what I heard. And I've seen on YouTube, Ian Gillan said he didn't get along with Richie Blackmore very well, and I guess there's no great rush to do a reunion, but maybe if the price is right, they would get back together. This next review is going to be quite short because it was a forgettable concert, Velocity Girl. It was some alternative band at the time, which was 1996. Wow. It was in a cabaret bar on St. Lawrence Street. So there's not really a lot to say about this. I didn't know one song. It was my friend that drags me to these kind of unknown bands, and usually they're not that exciting, and I forgot. I remember thinking maybe one or two songs were good, but I never heard of them after or before. So, last page of shows. This show is National Velvet. You know what I said about Velocity Girl? Well, I'm going to say the same thing about National Velvet. Some heavyset woman that was a decent singer, kind of. I didn't know one song. They never were a big band. They're Canadian. They were just a band that were fun to watch at the time, but I didn't know any of their music, so I didn't really get into it that much. Hard to believe that's 1992. That was the Brick Bar, which is where I saw Peter Criss and the Ramones as well. Dandy Warhols. I think I knew one of their songs. They're still around. They're called the club was Les Foufounes Electric. So they were good live. The one song I knew, I don't even remember what it was called. I mean, they never escalated to being this huge band that everybody loves. They were always a kind of lesser known band, but still, why not? It was an okay show. I saw this guy only once. He just was in Montreal, and I didn't go back ever, but not because I don't like him. It's just because there's always something else to do. Rod Stewart, 1988. He played all his songs, and a fun show. I mean, Rod Stewart's a very commercial artist. He has a lot of top 40 hits, so you can't go wrong with seeing him. He had a lot of lesser-known songs, which I like Gasoline Alley and other grittier tunes from when he was less known. But he didn't play those as much. More the Maggie May #1 hit type of songs that he was better known for. He played, so I liked it. I might go back and see him. Like I almost went, but I have never gone back. Here's a guy, Ted Nugent. This is back in his loincloth days, 1980, which is incredibly long time ago. I can't believe that it's been that long. He swung from a rope. Can't remember if Cheap Trick opened up for him or not. It's a very distant memory. It doesn't really matter, but he was fun. There was an opening act. Oh, anyway. I guess I could look it up if I really care about who was the opening act of Ted Nugent. But at the time, Cat Scratch Fever had just been out for a few years, and Stranglehold, I think, was out too. So I liked his music from Showham, and I heard it a lot on the radio. So it made me want to go out and see him, and I don't regret it. This next act was, at the time, huge in the US, England, Canada, massive hits all over the world. Bryan Adams. Since I even see the ticket stub, and Bryan is spelled Brian, and I think after that he changes to Bryan. I went, like I said, it was his peak time. I think it was mid-'80s. The ticket stub has been torn badly by the guards at the door, so I can't really see much about what the year was. But it was extremely good show. He's a great showman. He played guitar. Other people played guitar with him in the concert too. And he went on to have many other hits. And never saw him again. Not because I didn't like it. I really did like it. But a lot of times you have to say to yourself when a guy comes back to town, or an actor, a singer, a woman, female, whatever it is, do I really, really, really need to see this person again and again and again every time? I've heard multiple stories about Bon Jovi fans and Bruce Springsteen fans that go across the country to follow these guys so they can hear them sing, Living on a Prayer for the 300th time, or Born in the USA by Springsteen for the 200th time. I'm not a huge fan of going to see acts over and over and over again. It's happened a few times. There's been acts I've seen multiple times, but that was just back then. But like the April Wine, I saw a few times because they're formed in Montreal. They had a lot of, they were kind of based here, so they played a lot here. And I also won tickets a couple of times. And Cheap Trick I saw a lot of times. But one time it was outdoors for free, which was horrible. And another time I saw them opening up for Pearl Jam, which wasn't good either. So I'd say out of the 5 times I saw Cheap Trick, probably 3 of them were really good and 2 of them were very forgettable. So I just don't see any point of just running back and forth across the country to see the same acts over and over again. My final concert review is one of the great shows I saw. This is a long time ago. Let me see if I see the year. 1983. This is at some school's gymnasium, of all things. It was Harlequin, who then were a huge band in Canada only. Never really broke into the US, maybe with one song. They played it a bit here and there. But I love that band. They were very tight, and they were at their peak at the time. I like hard rock, and they sang well too. And it's a very good memory for me back when in the early 80s. And the opening act had about 3 or 4 Canadian songs too. Never really broke in the US. Luba, who her big song was Every Time I See Your Picture I Cry. And she had a couple of songs called Let It Go, and maybe one other song or 2 later on in her career. And these are bands that never really made it to the big time and outside of the Canadian market. So it's great that I supported them in the way that I could to go see them back then, and it's a good memory. So that's it for the concerts for now. I'm trying to see if I have not a lot left. I mean, I'm gonna have to start digging into my discussions about meetings with rock stars soon, because I see another 20 or 30 subs. So maybe I can do another show about the concerts I've seen, and then from there I'll branch out into other topics like favorite bands of all time, best instrument players. Like maybe I'll do a show about how great a guitarist was, or rank guitarists. I hear people who have music talk shows do things like their top 20 favorite songs from different bands. I mean, my show is open, it's broad, it's can be filled up with any content that I want to do, or if I have people give me feedback about what they like or don't like, what they would like to do, and maybe even at some point there will be some kind of interaction with famous people, like a rock star, to get them on the show, which would be fun. But I don't think at this point I will be able to do that, but I will at some point try to do it. And if so, it will be an honor to have a show interviewing even a local act or an international act, music act, either singers, guitarists, drummers, it doesn't really matter, even a manager that gives me inside information. So that'll do it for this week. Edition 3 of Eddie G's Music World. And if you like anything, say you like it, or if you want to subscribe, that would be fun too. So I'll see you next week. Eddie G's Music World. Thank you. Goodbye.